Imagine buying your dream home, only to have your new neighbors march into your backyard and tell you everything that's wrong with it. Not congratulations, not a warm welcome, just complaints, demands, and disapproval. Well, that's exactly what happened to me, and what they didn't know was that their own words would eventually come back to bite them. If you've ever had a neighbor who thought your property was their business, smash that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because this story is about how I turned my neighbor's pettiness into one of the most satisfying long games of revenge you'll ever hear. About 10 years ago, I bought what I thought was my perfect home. The inside was everything I needed, spacious, well-designed, move-in ready. But the backyard, let's just say it was overwhelming. The previous owners had poured what must have been tens of thousands into landscaping. There was a massive water feature that took up nearly the entire yard. We're talking a winding 50-foot stream, lined with river rocks, leading into not one but two massive ponds with fountains. Some people might have seen paradise. To me, it felt like living behind a miniature theme park. I wanted a simple backyard, grass, maybe a patio, room for my kids and dog to run. Instead, I had a backyard that belonged in a garden magazine, and I knew right away the water feature had to go. Not long after moving in, I met the neighbors. Now, usually when people introduce themselves, it's a friendly handshake, maybe a welcome casserole. Not here. Both neighbors from behind my property, let's call them Nancy and Carl, walked straight into my backyard, uninvited, like they owned the place. Smiles? Nope. Congratulations. Forget it. They spent 10 solid minutes ranting. That water feature is hideous. We begged the last owners to take it out, but they refused. The frogs are loud. The fountains run all night. It ruins the neighborhood. At first, I nodded along politely. I mean, sure, I didn't love the landscaping either. But then, their tone shifted. They weren't just venting, they were demanding, acting like it was my job to fix what the previous owners had done. I remember gripping my arms, forcing a smile, thinking, wow, I just met you, and you're already telling me how to run my property. Finally, I cut them off with a vague, yeah, I've got a lot to do back here. What I meant, back off. Here's the twist. After that encounter, something inside me changed. Originally, I wanted that water feature gone immediately. But after the way Nancy and Carl spoke to me, after the arrogance, the entitlement, the complete lack of respect, I thought, why should I give them what they want? So I left it. For years, every morning, I'd sip coffee on the porch, staring at that ridiculous fountain blasting water into the air like Old Faithful. I'd smile to myself, picturing Nancy trying to sleep while frogs croaked from the ponds. I'd imagine Carl glaring out his window at the sparkling water he despised. And every time I thought about tearing it out, their voices echoed in my head. You need to get rid of this. That backyard became my silent rebellion. Of course, neighbors like Nancy and Carl don't stay silent forever. Little things started happening. I'd catch Nancy lingering by the fence, shaking her head at the sound of running water. Carl would mutter comments if he saw me mowing. One summer, Carl even shouted, "When are you finally going to get rid of that monstrosity?" I just shrugged and said, maybe someday. Inside, though, I was laughing, because the truth was, I'd grown comfortable with it. Did I love it? Not exactly, but living with it was easier than giving them the satisfaction. Then 2020 rolled around. COVID changed everything. Suddenly, I was home more, staring at my backyard every single day. And now, the water feature wasn't just a statement against my neighbors. It was work. Pumps breaking down, algae everywhere, mosquitoes breeding like crazy. I realized keeping this thing just to spite Nancy and Carl was no longer worth it. But here's where the delicious revenge comes in. I didn't just quietly remove the water feature. Oh no, I made it a spectacle. Week by week, I dismantled it piece by piece. During the height of lockdown, when everyone was home, watching from their windows. The giant boulders, hauled out with a rented mini excavator. The pumps and piping, stacked up by the curb for all to see. The ponds, drained, filled, and leveled into a wide-open lawn. Every day I worked out there. Nancy and Carl peeked from behind curtains, practically drooling with anticipation. They thought they'd won. They thought their years of nagging finally paid off. And I'll admit, part of me wondered if I'd cave and go over, let them gloat, maybe even accept a thank you. When the last rock was gone, and the backyard was finally a simple, peaceful green space. Silence. No thank you, no acknowledgement, not even a nod of approval. They had spent years hating that water feature, making it my problem. And when I finally, on my terms, took care of it, nothing. And weirdly enough, that was the sweetest revenge of all, because I hadn't done it for them. I'd done it for me, and by the time they realized that, it was far too late. They'd wasted years, stewing in bitterness, while I'd spent years enjoying the satisfaction of knowing I controlled the outcome all along. In the end, the revenge wasn't just the backyard. It was the power shift. They thought they could dictate how I lived. They thought they had influence over my property. But I proved, silently, year after year, that their opinions meant nothing. And when the ponds were finally gone, the victory wasn't theirs, it was mine. Because the one thing they wanted most wasn't the yard itself. It was control, and that I never gave them. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's not dramatic. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is patience, letting people stew in their own bitterness until it eats them alive. Because in the end, living your life on your terms is the biggest victory of all. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, have you ever had a neighbor try to control you? What did you do about it? And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more of the most satisfying revenge stories on the internet. This version expands the original post into a full emotional revenge arc with setup, escalation, payoff, and reflection.